Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Highlight Haven NFL Recap Show. I'm your host, Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by Josh Wolver of Josh's Sports Report to break down the AFC and NFC Championship games. Josh, it's great to have you on.
Matt, thanks so much for having me here. This is our second to last of the season. Matt, I'm not sure if the viewers at home can catch the logo on the side of your helmet, so you might want to turn it around, just so we can see. Yep, that's not great for Commanders fans. But thanks for having me on the show, Matt. I'm sure you'll tell us a lot about what went wrong in that one.
Yeah, of course, we will be taking callers throughout the stream using the link in the chat. We will also be watching the chat if you have any questions. I am rocking the helmet today. After last episode yesterday, I did say I was going to rock the helmet, win or loss, and not the outcome I necessarily wanted, but I still got to rock the helmet, so that's what we're going to do today. Now, let's get right into it. Starting Commanders at Eagles. It was a rough one. 23-55 loss. The Commanders got absolutely destroyed in this one, and 55 points is the most any team has scored in a conference championship game since the 1970 merger. This game already felt kind of over from the beginning, to be honest. After an 18-play opening drive that resulted in a field goal for Washington, Saquon Barkley had a 60-yard rushing touchdown on the Eagles' first offensive possession. Barkley did end this game 15 carries, 118 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. He now has 5 combined touchdowns throughout his last 2 games. Now, Jaden Daniels, it kind of felt like he was the only offensive player for Washington that actually wanted to win this game. He went 29 of 48, 255 passing yards, 48 rushing yards, a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and an interception. His main target was Zach Ertz. 11 receptions, 104 receiving yards. Terry McLaurin also had 51 receiving yards and a touchdown. He now has a receiving touchdown in each of the Commanders' 3 playoff games. So he has been very active in the playoffs, obviously. Now, in terms of the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, 20 of 28, more completions than we usually see from him, 246 passing yards, a passing touchdown, and 3 rushing touchdowns. Hurts hasn't thrown an interception in 9 straight weeks, and including the playoffs, he has had 18 rushing touchdowns this season. I already mentioned how good Saquon was, but he wasn't the only good running back for the Eagles. You also have Will Shipley, 4 carries, 77 rushing yards, and a touchdown. A.J. Brown, 6 receptions, 96 receiving yards, and a touchdown. And then Dallas Goedert, 7 receptions, 85 receiving yards. Those are some of the main player stats. And then Philadelphia had 130 more rushing yards than Washington and 6 more first downs. I think that the main thing that really made Washington lose this game was the 3 fumbles, obviously.
Yep.
Austin Eckler had one of those fumbles in the third quarter when Washington was down 34-23. And at that point, we were driving down the field. We were starting to gain a little bit of momentum, obviously. And if we scored a touchdown on that drive, now we're looking at a 4-3-point game, which is obviously a lot more approachable. But then Eckler did fumble on that drive, and that did lead to Philadelphia points. Not the ideal situation for Washington there. And Washington attempted 17 third downs and 6 fourth downs throughout 3 playoff games combined. The Commanders attempted 15 fourth downs, just showing really how aggressive Dan Quinn has been. And I think it makes sense. As I mentioned during the tailgate show, we're not better on paper than a lot of teams. So sometimes you have to make up with that by being aggressive, going for it on fourth down. We saw the Tressway fake punt, obviously, 23-yard completion right there to Ben Sinnott to keep the drive alive. And Washington got called for a total of 9 penalties. Extremely sloppy game all around. And I know I told you this privately, but I think it's better to get blown out than to lose by 1 possession. Now, when I say blown out, do I mean lose by 32 points? Not necessarily. But in general, a blowout is better, I think, because if you lose by one possession, the only thing you're going to be doing is thinking about the small mistakes that your team made, that if you didn't make those mistakes, you could have won the game. And it's like, yes, we made a lot of mistakes in this game, but if Austin Eckler didn't fumble that one ball, no guarantee that we win this game anyway. We just got outplayed throughout the entire contest, if we're being honest. And I know this wasn't the best way to go out, but obviously the future is bright. There's a lot to look forward to. So it's not the worst situation for the Commanders, unlike a team like Buffalo, who's been in this for, 5 straight years and hasn't been able to do anything. This is just the start, first year of the rebuild. And, things are only hopefully going to go up from here. Looking forward to the future. Josh, what do you see in this game?
Man, I think you again hit on all the main points. Good job. And about that blowout thing,
Mhm.
I think it's obviously better emotionally.
Mhm.
Definitely not when
Yeah.
you're gonna go
Yeah.
back and watch film on the game and be like, my goodness, we did not stop the run.
Yeah.
But maybe from a fan's
Mhm.
perspective,
Yeah.
yeah, I personally as a Jet fan, you can probably see that's a CJ Mosley autographed jersey back there. Jet fan here, lifelong Jet fan. No clue what the playoffs are like. So don't ask me what it feels like to lose in the playoffs. We'll turn to Matt on that one. But as for this game, my goodness, the Eagles put up 55 points, the most in a conference championship game ever, carried by the backs of a 7 rushing touchdown performance. Saquon Barkley had 15 carries, 118 yards. Will Shipley had one at the end. That was irrelevant, though. But the main point I want to hit on, Jalen Hurts, 10 carries, 16 yards, 3 touchdowns. And you know what? It wasn't really Jalen Hurts, it was the tush push the
Yeah.
whole time. Here's the thing I wanna talk about. First of all, I thought it was extremely funny that Frankie Louvu decided to go Superman times 3, and then it got to the point where the officials literally said, "Washington, do this a couple more times, and we will award a touchdown without Philly, breaking the goal line," which I never even heard of.
Mhm.
I never even heard of it threatened before, so I thought that was pretty funny, and you know what? When he wasn't doing that, Washington couldn't stop the tush push, and when he was doing that, I guess it worked. So maybe his snap counts were just a little off if you were watching that game. But here's the thing I want to talk about: Jalen Hurts, the tush push, 1 passing touchdown, 246, nothing spectacular there. But do we think that going behind a guy and shoving him forward is the right way to be scoring touchdowns in the NFL? I get it. If you're an Eagles fan, you're probably saying, well, no one can stop it. Why don't the defenses just get better? But there has been talks of the NFL owners banding together to say, well, you can't push forward, you can pull backwards, which we sometimes see when linemen, get on the other side and try and pull their guy for the first down or the touchdown. But Matt, do you think they should be allowed to push forward and try and propel them into the end zone with a couple guys behind them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned how the Eagles are the best at it, and they're the main team utilizing it, obviously. And yeah, that's something that other teams have to prepare for. If that's their main move that they want to use, then they can absolutely use it. Is it legal? 100%. Is every part about it fair? 100%. I mean, they're just using another play, and they just managed to perfect it with the best offensive line in the league. I think they're just using their power to their advantage. I don't see it's annoying, yes, 100%. I don't see anything wrong with it though. And from if Eagles fans' perspective, they probably love it. And
Of
I know
course.
the Eagles love it. I know fans are gonna hate it, but it's fair. And I don't really see a problem with it. If a team can't stop it, that's that team's problem, not the NFL's problem.
Well, I think that's extremely interesting coming from an NFC East fan who you guaranteed to play 2 times a year, and this year
Yeah.
you play him 3 times, so, you're used to that getting scored on you. But as for a couple other big statistics in this game to sort of sum up what we saw, Eagles 7 yards per play, which
Mhm.
dumbfounded me considering that, after the first quarter, we knew, I mean, even after that first 60-yard run by Saquon where he just, outrun, out-juked, the entire Washington defense, we basically knew, and even heading into this game beforehand on our pregame show, it was going to be all run game. And yet they picked up 7 yards per play, which isn't usually what happens when you're committed to running the ball. It's more of 3 to 4 yards a play, pick up a first down, keep the sticks moving, be efficient on third down, which they were. They went 50%, 5 of 10, and then 1 of 1 on fourth down. So they weren't terrible on third and fourth downs, but 7 yards of play amazed me. You're right, they minimized the penalties, 5 penalties for 30 yards, and they did not turn the ball over, which continues to be our playoff themes dating back to last week. Washington, absolutely, you're right, Matt, Philadelphia outplays Washington in almost every which way. They dominate them at the line of scrimmage. Zach Ertz did prove to be a big factor, but nowhere close enough for Washington. Unless you have anything else, let's move over to Kansas City for Bills Chiefs.
Yeah, and before we do move over, if you're watching this, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Go check out Josh's channel as well, Josh's Sports Report. But yeah, let's go over to the next game. Bills at Chiefs. The Bills can never get it done in the playoffs against the Chiefs. Mahomes is now 4-0 against Buffalo in the playoffs. This was a 32-29 Chiefs victory. Josh, I'll let you get it started.
Yep. It continues to be the horror for Buffalo. You mentioned it. They are now 0-4 against Kansas City in the Super Bowl. The Patrick Mahomes show continues to roll on against Josh Allen. We mentioned it in the preview episode. Patrick Mahomes is a different beast, and there's no other way around it. I mean, before I start, there were a couple calls that were generously favoring Kansas City. Matt, fourth down, they say Josh Allen did not break the plane with the football. Extremely close call. I thought upon replay they would overturn it. They did not. Kansas City had a takeaway on downs. And then there was another one, jump ball in the end zone. That was 50-50 ball. They could have called it either way, and they called it a Kansas City catch. Could have been an interception, but there was also a penalty, so Kansas City would have kept the ball. But let's talk about a little bit about this game. Josh Allen, not a terrible game, 237, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he played his heart out. James Cook, I mentioned the running game was going to be big. Not as much of a workload, only 13 carries, but he made the most of it, 85 yards, 6.5 a carry, and add 2 touchdowns onto that. Mac Hollins and Curtis Samuel had the 2 touchdowns for Buffalo. And then there was Patrick Mahomes. The villain arc continues. Not exactly his best game. 18 completions, 245 though, and a touchdown. We mentioned it. It was not going to be the Isaiah Pacheco story. It was going to be the Kareem Hunt story. A touchdown, 64 yards, but also Patrick Mahomes had the 2 rushing touchdowns himself. Nice pylon dive on one of them. But when you look over at the team statistics category, Buffalo did not turn the ball over. They only punted twice. Same with both teams. They had more time of possession. First downs favored Kansas City, but only by a little. Buffalo went 4 of 6 on fourth downs. And you know what? They had a chance at the end, but Kansas City again comes up clutch. The narrative continues. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce are alive for a chance at the first ever three-peat in Super Bowl history. They go to New Orleans to face the Eagles in what will be a rematch of 2 years ago. What should be an awesome matchup. Matt, what did you see in Bills Chiefs here?
Well, I mean, first of all, as I mentioned, Josh Allen is 0-4 against the Chiefs in the playoffs, which is ironic because this isn't the first time that the Bills have had a 0-4 stretch in the playoffs. So, really, really sucks for them, obviously. What happened to Dalton Kincaid? I mean, he has been a mess this season. Was supposed to be one of the league's best tight ends. Obviously dropped that pass towards the end of the game that would have resulted in a fresh set of downs. And this would have probably been one of the better plays of Josh Allen's career if he caught that ball.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely beautiful play from Josh Allen, who had 237 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns in this game. As you mentioned, James Cook, I think they could have utilized him a little more, but he did ultimately have a really solid game. And now Xavier Worthy had 101 scrimmage yards, including 15 rushing yards. So Worthy, I found this to be interesting. I was looking at Pro Football Reference earlier, and Worthy didn't have 75 scrimmage yards one time throughout the first 13 weeks of the season. He didn't have it one time throughout that entire span. And he's hit that mark 4 times in his last 6 games. So he has been on a really, really hot streak recently. Um, yeah, this was a very even game, though. Buffalo had just 6 more yards than Kansas City in total, 12 more rushing yards, 6 less passing yards. The Chiefs averaged 0.3 more yards per play. So yeah, very, very tight matchup, obviously. And in both conference championship games this weekend, the winning team had 28 first downs and the losing team had 22 first downs. And then if you want to dive a little deeper into it, I realize that Buffalo's statistics are extremely similar to the Commanders' team stats from this week. Buffalo attempted 14 third downs. The Commanders attempted 17. Buffalo went 4 of 6 on fourth down. The Commanders went 4 of 6 on fourth down. And the Bills had 48 total yards worth of penalties. Washington had 47 total yards worth of penalties. So very, very almost identical statistics for the two losing teams in this matchup. But yeah, you covered this game really well. It's inevitable. Death, taxes, and the Kansas City Chiefs making the Super Bowl. It happens once again. And I was telling you, like, the Bills have been a better team this year, but just no matter what kind of season Mahomes has had, no matter what circumstances the Chiefs are in, I know that they can get it done in the playoffs. And that is the reason why, even if he doesn't win MVP this season, which he won't, Patrick Mahomes is undoubtedly the best quarterback in the NFL right now.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean,
Playoff quarterback or quarterback?
they go together. They go together because how are you going to be the best quarterback if you can't thrive in the playoffs? How's Lamar Jackson going to be the best quarterback if he can't do anything in the playoffs? How's Josh Allen going to be the best quarterback if he's 0-4 in the playoffs against the Chiefs? I'm taking the guy who has won 2 straight Super Bowls trying to win a third.
He's the best. Sure, he can be the best, but best as in
He's the
most
second greatest.
successful and most valuable, but I mean not most valuable,
He's the second greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah, correct. But there's people who had a better statistical season than him. I'm not saying that those guys, obviously both of the guys that are in the front runners for MVP, Allen and Lamar Jackson, both had better statistical seasons than Patrick Mahomes. And frankly, their teams played better than the Chiefs did this season. But the way that Patrick Mahomes can succeed in the playoffs is like no other. If you're in the chat, you want to get in on the action, call in using the link that Matt has right up there. Or if you want to type something in, we'll react to all chats. Matt, did you want to respond to that?
I mean, from a statistical standpoint this season, Mahomes hasn't nearly been the best quarterback, but I also don't think that's a fair way of putting it because if you do look at just baseline statistics, then you could argue that Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, are they all better than Patrick Mahomes? Like, I mean, obviously statistics is part of it, but when it comes down to it, Mahomes can win. That's what matters. He gets it done in the playoffs, and that's why he's the best quarterback in the league. We could debate this another time, though. Do you want to get to the weekly wrap right now?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to go first, or you want to hand the reins over to me?
I feel like I always go first. I'm going to have you go first today.
All right, well, your Washington Commanders just got eliminated. Year one of the Dan Quinn era, year one of the Jaden Daniels era. I want a little bit, and I'm sure, I don't know what's going on with your channel outside of here if you're going to do a Commanders season recap or something like that, but I want to hear your thoughts on the season as a whole. There were the ups. There was the Hail Mary at the end where Tariq Stevenson should have gotten cut. There was the beating the Lions in the playoffs. There was the doink in field goal against the Buccaneers in the playoffs. I could go on and on. The ups and the downs, the wins and the losses. Matt, can you give us a bit of your final thoughts on the Commander season?
That's a loaded question. That is a very loaded question. But yeah, of course. I've said this. I think I've said this on the podcast before, but the season started really rough. It was the 17-point loss to the Buccaneers, and then beating the Giants 21-18 off all field goals, the Austin Seibert game. Now, as a Commanders fan, when those two games happened, it was kind of like, okay, we have a rookie quarterback. This rookie quarterback has looked fine, but this is probably like a 4 or 5 win season. Just another bad year for the Commanders. At least the future is good. At least we have our rookie quarterback. And then it all changed in week 3 against the Cincinnati Bengals. That was a 38-33 victory. Terry McLaurin had that improbable touchdown towards the end. I think it was like a 9% chance, maybe even less, of getting completed. And at that point, I was kind of wondering, like, was that a fluke game, obviously, because the Bengals were struggling, as they always do to start the season. It feels like Cincinnati never starts the season well. But I know that they're a good team, so that win was obviously good. And then from there, we just went on a roll. Luckily, we got to benefit off playing some easy teams. We got to play the Cardinals, we got to play the Browns, the Panthers. But during that span, we realized that Jaden Daniels was actually a really
Yeah.
good quarterback. We held up with the Ravens, which was probably the most important game of all of them. And we kind of just went on a roll for the rest of the season. It felt like no team could really stop us. There were a lot of nerve-wracking moments, and as you mentioned, that Hail Mary, obviously. A lot of moments where it didn't feel like we should have won, but we did end up winning, like that game against the Bears. And then a lot of moments where we still just looked terrible, despite the record, and it made you question whether this is actually a good team or not, like against the Dallas Cowboys, the second time we faced them. That game, the final game of the week, that game was an absolute, or no, it wasn't the final game. The first time we faced them, the Cavante Turpin kick return touchdown game, that was terrible. We were beating some good teams towards the end. We beat the Falcons. We beat the Saints. We beat the Eagles. But I think the thing I was kind of nervous about is that during those games, we beat Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler, and Kenny Pickett. So, it's like how much can you really weigh those in? And then the playoffs were just a completely different story, obviously. Zane Gonzalez, great game that he had this week, obviously. But the doink was unbelievable. I wasn't feeling too confident going into that wild card game, especially between Lattimore and Evans. I forgot to mention this. Lattimore obviously got into that mini fight with A.J. Brown in this one. A lot of headbutting in this game. A lot
Yeah.
of almost fights. Could have seen a big brawl start at really any moment in this game. But the Lions was just unbelievable. I didn't really have a chance to even take it in, even after it had been like a whole week. You know what I'm saying? Like, is this really happening? Did we just score 45 points on the Lions? It was unbelievable. But nonetheless, an incredible season. Brings a lot of hope for the future. I never thought that this was supposed to be our year, even when we were playing extremely well. You're not supposed to win a Super Bowl the first year of a rebuild, obviously. Take a team like the Texans. We might look worse next year because winning 13 games is a really high bar. But even if we somehow look worse next year, even if we don't win 12 games, if we don't make the NFC Championship, that's not a bad thing necessarily. We just set really high standards this year, and hopefully we're good next year. It's kind of hard to predict. We might go back to 4 wins. I'm not really sure. You know, hoping that we keep this up. It's been surreal though, and I'm very, very excited that I can root for a good football team finally.
All
That
right.
was a lot
You
of
got
talk.
one this week?
Yeah, so I do have one for you. Now, you were mentioning how funny that play was when Luvu kept jumping over the offensive line, trying to become, his inner Troy Polamalu, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and the ref said that they could award a touchdown if you want. You said that that was funny, right? And I agree. It sounded kind of stupid. When it comes down to it, you kind of touched on it, but you never said whether you think that should or should not be allowed. Should you be able to award a touchdown given the situation, what was happening in the game?
Wow. Okay. So if you don't know what was happening, the ball was basically on the quarter of a yard line. So every single time Washington jumped off sides, you don't get an automatic first down
Yeah.
on a the first they actually threatened for an unsportsmanlike conduct, which is also half the distance to the goal, which it still doesn't help the cause. So after about I think 2 or 3, it was 2 by Luvu and then one other on the defensive line. I
Yeah.
can't remember
It was
his
one
name.
false start after the 2 Luvu.
Yeah, there was one other jump on the Commanders' line. So the ball literally could not be moved any closer, or else it
Yeah.
would be breaking the plane of the goal line. So I think their point was, and also this was hurting the Commanders because during that whole time, the game clock would reset and continue to wind. So they were taking time off their own hands. But I think I think they should be able to award touchdowns because if you're up and you're just going to keep jumping off sides and then the play clock and the game clock reset and then continue to wind after because it's not a foul under 5 minutes, you could waste a ton of time. Bill Belichick did that
Yeah.
way back in his heyday against the Jets. He found a loophole where he sent his special teams unit out to punt, took a delay a game, to supposedly try and get breathing room for his punter. The Jets declined it as a strategical move. Then he false started again before he finally gave in and punted. But since the ball could not be moved any closer, if it had happened again, yes, I think they would have and should be able to award the touchdown because A, it was inevitable, and B, we're trying to watch action-packed football. Sorry, Frankie Louvu, but you jumping over the line 6 times isn't exactly what's going to get the ratings up.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think the game's got to keep moving, and that's a good way to do it. But I thought it was kind of ridiculous that it had gotten to that point. But it was interesting. It was a new one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything you said because I know that the Commanders were obviously losing at this point. But if you look at it from a team that's potentially winning and they're doing the same thing, then they're basically wasting the entire game. That's unfair, obviously, as you mentioned. And who's going to stop Luvu from doing that, right? Like, it was obviously the only chance with the tush push set up. It was the only chance that Washington really had of stopping Philadelphia. And because, I mean, here's the thing. You could divide the number 1 in half as many times as you want. It's never going to hit
Yeah.
0. They're never going to actually get into the goal line. So, I mean, no one's going to stop Luvu if that's basically the only chance that the Commanders have to get a stop and potentially push Philly back a little bit. So I know it sounded ridiculous and it sounded stupid and it sounded like the refs were completely against Washington. But looking back on it, 1,000,000% does make sense that you're not trying to waste the entire game doing stupid jumps over the offensive line.
Matt, can I add a second weekly wrap here? Because I was
Yeah.
deciding between these two, and since it was
Mhm.
just the divisional round, we didn't have a ton of games to recap. So, would you mind if I added one more? Because I
Sure.
think you got a good one. All right. Why would the NFL not invest in Hawkeye technology? This league is a hundreds of billions of dollars worth a ton of money, and you're telling me you can't install an extra 10 cameras in the stadium and put a little chip in the ball to read if it gets through the first down or not? Because I
Agreed.
thought Josh
Agreed.
Allen was over the line. Are you kidding me? If you're gonna tell me that the NHL can do it and see if the puck crosses the goal line. Soccer, they've got little VAR things. They can tell
Yeah.
if you're offsides. They can tell if your little pinky toe is too far over the defender in soccer, in FIFA, whatever, World Cup. In in whatever. In they can even do replays, but in football, when there's a scrum and there's 8 guys, they take the little end zone pylon cam and try and zoom it in 100 times and see where the ball is on a pile of 8 people. Come on, guys, let's install a little chip in the thing and have a sensor detect whether or not it crossed the goal line or crossed the first down line or where it went out of bounds. It can't be that hard. It really can't because the officials are walking in. They got to run like 10 yards up the field and spot it and then walk in a straight line and then detect and spot the ball there. This isn't the 1940s, man. Can we use the technology that's available? Because it's getting ridiculous. Why in the world do they not use it?
Yeah, I mean, the NFL is an old-fashioned league, no matter
Come
what.
on, I
And
don't
no, no,
care.
no, no, I completely agree with you. Um, and I'm just saying the NFL is an old-fashioned league, and they don't want to do that. They want to keep the integrity of the league. I don't know. It's stupid though. Completely agree. And I'm not talking about the Josh Allen play. I'm talking about the multiple times when the Eagles ran the tush push, it didn't feel like they got a first down, and the refs used their best judgment to
Yeah,
decide whether they get a first down.
I mean, I'm not even mad at the refs. You
Mhm,
cannot tell if there's
mhm,
8 guys on either side shoving, and like
mhm.
that one where there was a fumble, the ball came out, and they were like zooming in to see if the guy's knee was down. They actually had a good angle on that one, but when there's a fumble on the bottom of the pile, and they can like use cameras to like zoom in or something. There's got to be some sort of
Yeah,
better
but
way to determine this
I
stuff.
mean, at this point, at this stage in the NFC Championship game, using your best judgment to decide who moves on is absolutely
Yeah.
ridiculous. You have to have some level
Yep.
of I'm not just saying what I think, like this is actually the fact. This is what happened. Completely agree with you there. That's something that the NFL should definitely invest in. And I know they were talking about having like robot pylons over the offseason. Not really sure why they didn't do that. Why didn't they end up doing that? Because I don't like the chain gang.
The chain gang.
I don't like it. It's all it's all stuff that actual people do, and it's all stuff that they don't have any proof of.
Yep.
They just take their best guess, and you have more money than any other sports league
Yep.
in America. Why don't you use that? You're the most televised sports league. Please use some of your money and
Yeah.
make this more official because and of course, I'm not saying that the NFL is not official. It's like the most official you can get. But still, there are a few things that you could pick out like that where it does feel a little ridiculous that they're not able to better track where the ball is, what's a first down,
Yeah.
what's a fumble, or even a play where it's like two players catch the ball, one would be an interception, one would be an offensive completion. Who really caught the ball? Who hung on to the ball? I think
Yeah.
you mentioned that situation earlier, and that's another good thing where a tracker of some sort would help.
Yeah. And I mean, in tennis, they can literally tell out of bounds down to the blade of grass. They got some ridiculous cameras there. They got cameras on every single possible angle. I don't understand why it's not used, why there's not a sensor in the ball. That made me mad. That's been making me mad. I wanted to get that off my chest, but it seemed like an appropriate time to do so with some questionable calls, as there usually are in the NFL, because it's a questionable league. You go back whenever playoff round, whatever week of the NFL you want to talk about. No PI would have sent the Saints to the Super Bowl. Right? There's been bad officiating for years, but now we have the opportunities and the resources to do something about it, and we don't. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's a perfect way of putting it. Do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap this episode up?
Now, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks to preview the Super Bowl, Eagles and Chiefs. They'll do it again.
Mhm.
Jalen Hurts looking for redemption. Excited to preview that one, and we'll see you all then.
Yeah, and of course, next week I think is the Pro Bowl. All
Yeah.
that stuff's going on. I'll probably be watching the Grammys next week. I'm pretty sure they're Sunday night. I'd much rather watch that than flag football.
I
Uh,
gotta say, the dodgeball's fun. I don't lie. Watching the dodgeball is more fun than the actual game. When they
yeah,
like
I go back on YouTube and just watch
Yeah, right.
some of
Yeah,
like
you don't
the
gotta take time out of your Sunday.
no, I just go back and watch. So I liked the best catch until they made it not at the actual stadium. Like they just started filming videos of it. Um, so yeah, they kind of ruined the best catch. The entire thing is
They
kind of
ruined the
stupid.
entire Pro Bowl. I mean,
Yeah,
come on.
they 1,000,000% did. We
It's
don't
just Mickey Mouse awards at this point.
yeah, we
It's
don't see any
participation awards.
We don't see any Sean Taylor, rest in peace. Absolutely like drilling punters.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the kind of football I want to
Mm,
watch during the Pro Bowl. But enjoy your weekend with no football. Take a break. Um, I guess if you want to look at the good parts of the Commanders not being in the Super Bowl, I'm able to watch Kendrick Lamar without worrying about the
yeah,
score of the game and
yeah,
whether the Commanders are going to win or lose.
yeah,
So that is a good I guess that's the good side, and I don't like lose my mind during the game. So there's some bright things to the Commanders not making, and obviously disappointing. But I am excited to watch the Super Bowl nonetheless, even if we did get this matchup a few years ago. With that being said, can't thank you enough for coming on. Really do appreciate it. For everyone who made it up to this point, can't thank you enough for watching. Again, I'm Matthew Heiserman alongside Josh Wolver for your Highlight Haven NFL recap show. And as always, we will see you next time.